Welcome to week 6 of the Mustang build. This week we're going to go in a different direction. I got the old engine off of the engine crane and onto the engine stand. I got the shop picked up a little bit. And this week I'm going to focus on tearing the engine down and figuring out what exactly I have and seeing if it's usable. About 2 weeks ago I went through and sprayed penetrating oil in all the cylinders. And I've done that about once a week while it was sitting out there, just to kind of let everything sit and see if we can loosen this thing up. So now that we've got it on an engine stand, I'm going to take the breaker bar and see if we can break this thing over. So I went to break this thing over and this thing just started to tighten. So I decided to pull the bolt to the harmonic balancer off and make sure it doesn't look like it's going to break on me, because the last thing I want to do is snap a bolt inside the crank. I've tried turning it over. It doesn't feel like it's going to budge. I'm going to go ahead and start pulling some of the accessories off, get the water pump off the pulley. We'll take a look at the timing chain and we'll go from there. This is a puller tool. This is what I'm going to use to get the harmonic balancer off. I'm going to get on a soapbox here for a second. I see a lot of people get into comments of car videos and complain that if they had a shop and all the tools that the shop has, then they could do all this too. I'll be honest, I didn't get all these tools at once. I took it one part at a time. When you do something like this, you don't necessarily just jump straight into the full restoration. This isn't my first car I've worked on. I've had several cars personally that I've worked on in the past couple decades, and I ended up getting all of these tools over time. What you do is you start small. You start by getting a basic mechanic set, and you don't have to go out and buy a $500 name brand set. You can go and get a relatively cheap $50 set with your basic wrenches and sockets. And you start little. And as you go and you run into a problem and you need a new tool, you go out and get that one tool. You do it that way, and over time, after a few years of doing this, you'll find you have all the tools you need and you didn't go out and buy them all at once. I'll say buying name brand can sometimes be nice, but realistically, for most of what you're doing, if it's not a precision tool, you don't need name brand. You can go down to one of the discount stores and buy inexpensive tools, and they're gonna do what you need to do. Another thing to consider is go down to pawn shops. There is nothing wrong with the used tool. Hypothetically, this should be empty, but I don't know if it is, and I've been putting penetrating oil in the cylinder, so I should be able to get something out of it. Let's go ahead and see what I get. And that right there would explain why it doesn't turn over right now. Before I move on to the timing chain cover and the timing chain, I'm going to go ahead and put some mystery oil into each cylinder and see if that helps it break up. It's been a few weeks since I got the parts car. It's about time I go through it and see what it came with. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and vacuum out all the rat turds. I'll get this thing cleaned up, organized, and then I'll take all my spare parts from the garage and put it in this. Don't forget your gloves, because this is disgusting. parts are out of it, and it is disgusting in here. So So let's get the vacuum and get this vacuumed up. That biological disaster is now contained. I still need to get rid of that carpet completely. So I'm pretty sure that's where the zombie apocalypse is going to come from. But for now, this is good enough. I'll start gathering up all my extra parts and stuff and try to get in here in an organized fashion. So it's out of the garage, it gives me a little more room to move around and take care of business. So I let this motor sit for a few days with the oil in the cylinders in hopes that I can get it broken over. But unsurprisingly, this thing did not budge. And I think the next step is we need to break into this thing to see what it looks like on the inside. So let's get to work. Look at all that sludge in there. Honestly, that's not too bad. I'm not seeing any metal flakes. It's just dirty. Alright, let's take a look at what we have. We've got a little bit of rusting on the crank. A little bit of that nasty oil everywhere. Where all the rods look like they're in one piece. No major damage. If we get this thing to turn over, we still may be able to salvage this. Alright, let's get this thing rolled back over and we'll start taking the heads off. Let me show you something real quick. The guy who sold this to me told me it was a $289. That right there says 302. Now it may just have 302 heads on it, but this may be a 302. And that right there is why it won't turn over. This thing is disgusting. I'm going to try to clean it out. If these cylinders are in decent shape and they just need to be cleaned, I don't want to damage them by using metal tools to scrape out all the garbage. So, to my dismay, I'm grabbing one of my plastic interior tools and I'm going to try to clean out the inside of these cylinders, get all the big debris out, and then we'll come back in with some rags and some cleaner, get this short block to turn over. After trying several different things, I still can't get this block to turn over. So we're gonna remove the crank and pull the pistons out one at a time. So this motor is shot. We're taking this out. The piston broke. On this one, that piston broke, which that's not a huge deal. I could have just replaced the pistons. But then over here, this cylinder wall broke. So pretty much this motor is only salvageable as a core replacement or a new motor. It's a little disappointing, but sometimes that's how it goes. I was a little too rough with it. It was a little too rusty. We couldn't get it out. So in the end, what did we learn? This was probably a good motor when it got pulled. And then it got left outside and the elements had their way with it. And we took what was probably a good motor and turned it into scrap. So moral of the story, if you got a motor you want to put in something, don't leave it outside uncovered. At least wrap it with a tarp or something, and maybe it won't get so rusty. So the good news is, I still have this motor, and this one still has its plugs in it. So there's a good chance that this one might still turn over. So I'll have to get that other one off the engine stand, throw that out of the way. Instead, I can use that as a core return for a crate motor later. But I want to see if maybe this one can be used first. All right, so before we waste a bunch of time on this one, I've got access to the front plate. Let's see. Oh, that's turning. That's outstanding. It was a little bit of a frustrating week. Kind of feels like it was unproductive because I didn't actually get anything done. I started tearing down the one motor and it was just so rusted that I ended up breaking it. But the good news is I have a good motor. So next week we're back on body work. I'm gonna take the doors, we're gonna strip them, and my welder came in, so we're gonna start doing some patchwork. Until then, that's all I've got for this week, so you have a good weekend and we'll see you next Friday.